number 3 officially underway for Cowboys Training Camp 2023. Welcome back to Oxnard, California for Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford alongside Hailey Sutton. I'm Kyle Youmans, and Monday, a chance for the Cowboys to get back on the practice field. They had a complete off day on Sunday. A lot of guys getting away from football for a little bit, but then on Monday it's right back to work because preseason game number 1 is right around the corner.
Can you believe how fast this last 2 weeks, now going into week 3, has flown by? And I love that you mentioned that the guys took a break, because I think a lot of times the narrative in the NFL is that these guys are 24/7 hammering away, trying to get better. But I think it's just as important for them to take a step away, get their mind reset, come back in on game week, and get ready to go for Saturday. Got
to get ready to go. And, of course, that Saturday kickoff coming up, and that'll be here before you know it as well. A couple things to update from Mike McCarthy's press conference on Monday, saying that the Cowboys have elected to move on from Tristan Vizcaino. The veteran kicker who was brought in through the offseason program was released on Monday. The Cowboys sticking with Brandon Aubrey, who they signed about 3 weeks ago today, out of the USFL. I mean, ultimately, the kicking was not good on Saturday. The guys went 1 for 6 combined in terms of the mojo moment alone, and that doesn't even count the warm-up kicks and special teams work. But what do you think about this move and how the Cowboys are moving forward with the kicking situation?
I definitely like it. I think Tristan maybe didn't get a fair shot coming in when he did behind Brett Maher in the playoffs last season, but then he got all of the offseason to work in with this team. He got all of the nod to be the kicker this year. Bringing in Brandon Aubrey obviously drove the conversation, drove the competition a little bit better, but I just think that the potential there with Brandon Aubrey is a little bit better. He had a stellar season with the USFL, I believe 14 of 15 on his field goals, and then he was 100% on PATs, which is probably music to Jerry Jones's ears at this point. But I also thought it was interesting, too. Mike said they're open for business in terms of bringing in another veteran. There's several free agents that are still on the market, but it's good to give Brandon an opportunity to feel like the guy, at least for the week, see how he takes that pressure, and then we go from there.
I think Brandon Aubrey still has much to prove, too, because the competition may not be in the building right now, may not be in camp right now, but just like we saw last year, Liram Hajrullahu, Jonathan Garibay, neither one were the kicker when they started training camp and whenever they concluded it in week 1. But you also have some good news on the update front as Luke Schoonmaker, second-round draft pick out of Michigan, the tight end, is getting back in the fold today.
I'm excited to see Luke, and I know he's been chomping at the bit to get out there. I know personally this has been frustrating for him, coming in as this second-round guy, all these expectations, and then not being able to participate has been tough for him. So Mike McCarthy says he's going to go through individual drills. He's got a workout plan in place in terms of working off to the side through that rehab, but it'll honestly just be good to get eyes on what he's capable of, especially in a tight end room that's kind of on the fence in terms of who's going to play when and where. I know the conversation with the tight ends as well has been who's going to replace Dalton Schultz as that security blanket. And I love that McCarthy really clarified that. He said, look, you guys see what we have in that tight end room. We know that there's a lot of youth there. And that being said, we're going to continue to work through until we find what works best for us. So really good just to see him get back in the fold.
Yeah, great to see Luke Schoonmaker. Anytime a second-round draft pick gets put back on the field, that's a good thing for this Cowboys team. But when we come back, we talk about some other draft picks, specifically on the offensive line. What should you be watching for on the offensive line as the Cowboys prepare to take on Jacksonville on Saturday?
Inside Cowboys Training Camp, presented by Ford, is brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. This segment is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of different combinations, so that's fortunate for young players. Not probably where you always like to be, a week or two from now set on your starting 5. So we're still a ways from that. But I do like the experience that our offensive line unit is getting. The run blocking is okay. I mean, we're doing a good job. You can see our double teams are starting to get tighter and things like that. We got to be a little better on the backside. So the run blocking's coming. But the pass protection, this is great work for us. And frankly, it's part of the reason why I felt very confident in our training here in Oxnard and didn't have to go. I didn't feel the need to go practice against somebody else because, our line work is exceptional in my view.
And that Mike McCarthy bit brought to you by Sleep Number. Welcome back to Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford. Hailey Sutton, Kyle Youmans, and we are so excited to be joined once again by the one, the only Isaiah Stanback. Now, Isaiah, in that soundbite, you heard Mike McCarthy talk about his offensive line. It's been a little tricky without having Zach Martin here, but what can fans pay attention to as we get ready for Jacksonville this weekend?
Yeah, you mentioned there's a lot of moving pieces up there right now, but you need to pay attention to Austin Richards. He's going to be over there on the left side, and you also have TJ Bass coming out of Oregon. So both of those guys are going to be getting a lot of opportunities, a lot of reps, especially with Tyron Smith, obviously probably not getting a lot of reps, and then Terrence Steele working his way back from injury.
Yeah, Austin Richards, I mean, a fifth-round pick, but the fact that TJ Bass is even in the conversation as an undrafted rookie out of Oregon shows just how much he's stepped up. Richards mostly utilized at the right guard spot, and then you've got TJ Bass at that left guard spot, so it's been very interesting. It doesn't matter who's up front for the offensive line, though. This defensive line continues to show out. They did so on Monday again. But this defensive line, there's a lot of decisions to be made up front as well going into these preseason games. Who needs to step up and continue to impress these coaches in order to make the team?
Yeah, I think you have to look to the interior defensive line. I think you have to look at Quentin Bohanna. Well, there's going to be a lot of competition in there, obviously, with Big Hankins and Mozzie Smith being invested into right now. Bohanna's going to show up in a big way. You're also going to have to look in there and see who else we have in there. Big Bo. Then you also are going to have Chauncey Golston. Golston is going to have to make a big splash because this, as you mentioned, this D-line is just flooded on a lot of pass rushers, but they're not looking for pass rushers. They're looking for guys that can clog up the A-gaps and really hold the fort down so that this running game doesn't get going against them again.
Yeah, Mike did talk briefly about how the run blocking right now with that offensive line is still developing. So something to keep an eye on, especially when that defensive line is bringing the heat too. But Isaiah, sticking along the defensive side of the ball, we've seen the cornerback position really evolve since we've been out here in Oxnard. Trayvon got that new contract. Eric Scott has been a quiet surprise. How good does that position look, especially when they're getting ready to face a Jacksonville squad this weekend?
They look pretty stacked, and that seems kind of odd to say after the last few years here in Dallas. But you mentioned Eric Scott. That's going to be one of the rookies that's going to be rolling in there trying to get some reps. He's had a big impact in practice. That needs to transition all the way into the preseason so that he can make his mark. Then you also have some other young guys out there like Nashawn Wright. He's not as young as Eric Scott is, but he needs to make a big impact. He's a big corner. He needs to take advantage of his size and show exactly why they should utilize him on that side of the ball. But a lot of opportunities going to be presented. Kudos to the front office for really securing the starting lineup at the safety position and at the corners. Those guys are good there, but who's going to step up behind them?
That's a big question, and Mike McCarthy even talked about it with Jordan Lewis. He's been killing the rehab, is what a quote from Mike McCarthy. He's been killing it in the rehab portion, but you won't see him back in the fold at least over the next couple of weeks. But the way that Deron Bland hit training camp in the preseason last year allowed him to step up and fill into Jordan Lewis's role whenever he needed it. So for the most part, that looks like something that this team can continue to build on, hopefully from a young guy like an Eric Scott Jr.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Deron Bland and what he did last year, coming into camp, really stepping into the fold, making big plays, and then going into the preseason, balling out, and then that carried over into the regular season. It really gives you a lot more hope for later draft picks like Eric Scott for him to show up and see what he can do in the preseason.
Got to see what he can do. Lots of talent and lots of decision to be made, at least across the Cowboys roster going in to this preseason starting on Saturday. And, of course, Isaiah will be in the booth for that preseason game, 4 p.m. kickoff on CBS 11 and on the Dallas Cowboys TV network. But when we come back, we've got plenty more to talk about. But at this time, it's back on the offensive side. Ronald Jones to miss some time. How could this affect his decision-making process moving forward?
This segment was brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
Go Cowboys!
Wrapping things up here on Inside Cowboys Training Camp driven by Ford with Hailey Sutton. I'm Kyle Youmans. And one other update to hit. Mike McCarthy said that Ronald Jones suffered a groin injury on Saturday's practice, and he's going to miss a couple of days. That's a huge hit for Ronald Jones, who, of course, has already been suspended 2 games by the NFL, trying to make some waves in that running back competition. We'll see you tomorrow with more Inside Cowboys Training Camp from Oxnard.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Your kneecaps are on the numbers.
Inside Cowboys Training Camp, presented by Ford, was brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
Go Cowboys!